The line must go up, and since June of 2025, the line has spiked. Now, the line you're seeing here is the average price of consumer RAM over the last 18 months, courtesy of PC Part Picker. What that means to you is basically rip wallet or rip computer upgrade. And all through the PC industry, and even beyond that, things are actually looking dire. Manufacturers are abandoning consumer sales, prices are about to spike across the board, and government-backed schemes are actually ensuring that your interests are not the ones that are driving manufacturing anymore. And that's all because in a world where all the factories are feeding the AI data center boom, well, fundamentally, PC building is fucked, and it looks like it won't get better. At least not for quite a while. In the tech world, the start of the year is meant to be the big time where people hype up what's to come, including in PC gaming, and loads of that goes down at the Consumer Electronics Show. That's where everyone is showcasing the cool new hardware, graphics, peripherals. But this year, CES was, I think, actually exposing something deeply bizarre about the state of the PC gaming industry. Because there's just not a whole lot going on for the average gamer. There really isn't. Now sure, there were plenty of interesting peripherals, folding phones, new form factors for your PC cases, boondoggles like Razer's rather sus-feeling chatbot-powered desk companion, but if you were thinking about upgrading your PC, then it was not a CES for you. Now, what drives interest in PC gaming often is the hardware, and on that front, we had very little to show. AMD basically appeared to forget that they were actually producing a new CPU. Nvidia, though, were especially quiet, but at least they had some cool upgrades for PC gamers with their DLSS performance stuff, even if, yeah, their multi-frame generation tech is kind of reaching the stage where it actually might be suitable for some games. But for a lot of people, they were actually wondering, what if I just want some raw raster performance, and on that front, where is the expected 5070 Super? Where is the cheaper tech that makes use of existing chipsets in manufacturing to maybe benefit mid-range users? You know the way it's supposed to be expensive at the start, and then the people with the most money buy the expensive thing, which then funds the R&D and the scale that allows the next thing that's cheaper? Where's that bit that benefits the consumer? You know, where competition is supposed to drive that. Well, it turns out those are coming. But they are not new. I have a quick point to make though. You probably heard the buzz around Claude Code and Cursor. They're incredible in the right hands, but they can also be noob trap central. Personally, I've been building a lot of custom tools using Claude Code lately, like a room planner and a bunch of other things. It's genuinely fun, but that stuff can't save you from yourself if you don't actually understand what it is that you're making. And that's why today's sponsor, Boot.dev, matters more than ever. What they do is they teach back-end development. It's the kind of thing that lands you those 100K plus jobs, but they do it through a proper 12-month structured program that's structured like an RPG. It is amazing. It is designed for gamers. They've got over 750,000 students who have done 33.7 million lessons. That's insane. And those lessons are using the likes of Python, TypeScript, and Go. It's all taught from the fundamentals up. And from my perspective, well, I did a BEng in computer science, mostly focused on C++ and C#, so game engine stuff. A completely different world to web dev. But I can say that Boot's teaching approach is just incalculably better and more practical than how things were done during university. So this isn't really about, say, replacing the Claude Code and telling you, no, do everything by hand. No. This is about actually understanding what you're building, actually understanding the real skills. And unlike those too good to be true rapid boot camps, Boot.dev is affordable, self-paced, and designed to have a full year of learning so you can actually be a pro. And you'll get 25% off your first purchase at boot.dev/Bellular News. You'll save the most using that on an annual sub, and if you're not happy, well, they will refund you on the spot. I hope you're excited because AMD told Tom's Hardware that they're looking to, quote, reintroduce products back into the ecosystem. That's in the form of older CPUs. And according to reputable leakers, Nvidia is even preparing to reintroduce 2021's RTX 3060 in at least some markets during the first quarter of this year. So basically, Zen 3 CPUs, graphics cards from 2 generations ago. It seems that that is the future for affordable consumer hardware right now. Long gone are the days of the 1050 Ti. Now, of course, there is new hardware as well, but my god, it seems that new hardware is going to cost you a lot of money. Asus, as an example, just told retailers to expect, quote, strategic price adjustments on their products from January. Another group, CyberPower PC, has been warning of price hikes on all of their builds, and at least one Chinese distributor told their retailers to expect 6% and upward price increases for power supplies and coolers. The reason being, well, the material costs are actually climbing with demand. Because even though people are mostly talking about RAM for data centers, guess what? All those data centers need cooled. All those companies loading up in as many GPUs as they can, maybe even for their own use, those also need cooled. And those are companies with a business use case, meaning they will be able to pay so much more money than, you or I who just want to use a GPU or a cooler or whatever it is to enjoy our personal hobby. I mean, Framework even had to stop selling standalone RAM modules in order to preserve inventory and head off scalpers. And over in the Nvidia front, well, they're not raising prices on their cards at RRP. Well, that doesn't really matter because retailers have been driving their prices up steadily as demand has only increased. Because the best performance in PC gaming is also sometimes useful elsewhere. So let's talk about the obvious thing, the very simple factor driving all of this that's been building for months, and how it is not going to change anytime soon. Don't you love hoarding? You see, sometimes you can buy stuff that you won't even be able to use right now purely to deny it from your enemy. Let's talk about that sort of thing. At the start of December, Micron, who are the owner of the Crucial brand, well, they announced that they would no longer be a consumer business, which meant no more memory for the public to build their own computers with. They're fully going B2B. Not B2C. Now, reports suggested that before they made this decision, they held approximately 25% of total market share for DRAM. After Q2 2026, none of that will be available to you, the regular customer. And there's exactly one reason for this. You're not worth the time and you're not worth the money. It's not just you, it's everyone else watching this video and also me. Here's a quote. The AI-driven growth in the data center has led to a surge in demand for memory and storage. Micron has made the difficult decision to exit the Crucial consumer business in order to improve supply and support for our larger strategic customers in fast-growing segments. So basically, the tech that you need isn't worth producing because even at the inflated prices that I just showed you on PC Part Picker, well, you're still not going to pay anywhere near as much as OpenAI or Nvidia. For one example, Samsung happily increased prices for their enterprise buyers between 30 and 60% in the last few months of 2025 alone. And demand has still not slowed. And that's because what CES did show us is that the industry is broadly all in on the generative AI pipe dream. Or dream, whatever. Time will tell, the future will tell. But what will power any of that, be it a success or a failure, will be the AI data centers, and those things need money. Now here's a number that puts it in perspective. A single deal between Samsung, SK Hynix, and OpenAI has locked up 40% of the globe's production for DRAM. That's on the Stargate project. That is 40% of the globe, of our planet, of our species, everything that we have built. 40% of that is going into one deal for one customer. And we have to ask ourselves, will they immediately be able to use all of that RAM? Or is some of this just them trying to lock up as much of the market for future use as is physically possible? Because hey, when you have a deal for 40% of the globe's production, well, that deal is an asset that will surely help you raise money because you've got a contract that will mitigate supply risk that may exist for your competitors who maybe weren't able to lock up 40% of global supply. And this is bad for you and me. It obviously impacts pretty much every device you may use. DRAM's in a lot of things. It means the next generation of consoles, phones, even the Steam machine, they will all feel the knock-on effect of this manufacturing bottleneck. And the sad reality is that this is the system working as intended. You see, the gaming use case got the likes of Nvidia to where they are, but it now turns out their hardware is more useful for something else. That means they will obviously be focusing on that other thing, not on us. And as time goes on and we're perhaps able to afford less RAM, we're not really able to buy graphics cards as much anymore, then maybe the likes of GeForce Now end up being the thing that is more alluring for the average customer based on affordability. And you know what that means? Well, that means that the power that you used to buy in a box that would be in your house, well, that is now going to be in a data center. You'll be renting it instead of owning it. Because guess what? Say you play video games in your rig, 2.5 hours a day. Well, what about all those other hours in the day? From the perspective of the people who make all the hardware that is just going to sit there in your house, well, why do they not just put that in a server and then rent the use of that to you? What that ends up doing, I'd basically say, is it increases the power of their capital and it moves them more into a service business. instead of a product business. And I would say it is likely you can juice up the margins on such a business quite a bit more. At the very least, I can say it's a business that you'd certainly have more control of. And if we want a future where we actually own the compute that runs our games, well, we need to start thinking about this problem in those terms. Because right now there's a manufacturing bottleneck. There is going to continue to be one. And if it's us versus them, we are certainly not going to win. The system working as intended. You see, if all the good tech is being hoarded for the data centers, be it the memory, the Nvidia chips, or any kind of significant manufacturing support, then everyone else just has to, do with whatever happens to be left. And that's maybe where the reintroduction of old AMD hardware in the 3060s are coming from. As an example, those are using DDR4 RAM. They're not competing for the premium enterprise kit, and that basically ensures that the PC builders have at least got something. Because they, by which I mean us, are not important. But of course these companies aren't going to turn down an opportunity to charge you some lovely inflated prices for that old tech. And as of right now, there's no sign it'll change because, as I said, the system is working as intended. Let me explain. The South Korean government announced a $20 billion public investment in AI adoption and data center development, pushing corporate entities like Amazon and Nvidia to start developing infrastructure in their region. Over in the United States, the federal government is pushing an agenda that will see AI adoption encouraged and restrictions on data center building be weakened, even as they limit the ability for individual states to set their own policies. So that means that the money and the political pressure are all going in one direction. Hint, it's not the direction that is good for your freedom when it comes to your ability to access hardware like this. So what does that mean to you and me in a forward-looking sense? Let's do that. 2028. Who the hell knows what the world's going to look like by then, but it is the year that is basically how far out Samsung and SK Hynix estimate this surge of demand could continue. Now, it could go even beyond that. But what's interesting is they are not planning on scaling up to over-deliver. They're perfectly happy to keep demand where it is because, well, look at their unit economics and how good they look. And they don't want to be in a situation where a big boom, one that is perhaps being inflated by a lot of governments placing their hand in the market and putting, billions of investment into this. Well, if that dries up, they don't want to end up having invested massive amounts in some of the most expensive infrastructure on Earth. So that's why, even though there's all this demand, it doesn't appear that they are just trying to crank up their manufacturing capacity as much as is humanly possible. And that means that unless the big companies working in AI projects kind of collapse, which, many industry analysts think could happen, well, prices aren't going to come down anytime soon. Though, do be careful what you wish for, because I'd say that an AI bubble, if it pops in a very hard fashion, could damage a lot of the broader economy. And if that happens too quickly, it could turn into a lot of pain for regular people. So as much as there's this bit of me that kind of says overinvestment, bubbles bursting, that's kind of good, we need bullshit to stop, I also do think if it bursts too hard, well, how bad could it be? I think it could be a bit of a monkey's paw problem. But at least for you and me, it means we're looking at a few years, in the optimistic case, before hardware and upgrades are affordable again. And they may not even get affordable again. That means that our already kind of pricey hobby is now going to be out of reach for even more people. So rip you if you didn't upgrade your PC at the right moment, and frankly, rip you if you didn't buy a new Xbox on day one, because now the prices of even the consoles are going up. It's no surprise that console sales are absolutely flatlining. I guess what I'd say is if you're planning to build or do an upgrade right now, DDR4 prices are still climbing, but it's not in direct competition with the data center demand that is driving the DDR5 prices up as much. Though obviously, if returning to the past is the thing that everybody ends up doing to fuel their gaming, well, that'll create more demand for DDR5 and the prices will keep on going up. So it doesn't really look rosy in any case. Still, it's at least an option, unlike the AM4 ecosystem that AMD's kind of reviving. That may be a smart play to support into this. Then there's the other massive loser to this, Valve. because they won't be immune to this production pipeline problem. They were able to sell the Steam Deck at, I guess, a little bit more of a loss because Steam Decks are very much used for, playing video games on Steam where they make loads of store money. They've already said that with the Steam machines, if they were to do the same pricing, then loads of businesses would just eat up loads of Steam machines because it would be way too good of a deal on a machine that can just do generalized computing, which obviously doesn't support the same business model as subsidize the cost of the thing because you're going to be buying video games on Valve's store. That basically means that the Steam machine could be really expensive, and that's something that people already feared whenever it was first revealed. And since then, news about the likes of the RAM prices has essentially only got worse. And it doesn't stop at PCs. If the next-gen consoles, be it the PS6 or whatever the hell they decide to call the next Xbox, if those are being delayed or being compromised because of these shortages, then that's a generational setback for gaming hardware across the board. It would essentially mean that the new frontier for performance and graphics would take way longer to arrive. And perhaps if it does arrive, it could end up arriving in a different way, in a way that's enabled by the likes of DLSS and big data centers full of GPUs. So you may get that future performance, that future visual fidelity, whatever it is you want, but you may get that in the form of something you have to rent, which maybe you don't like. I certainly don't like it. Now, on the software side, well, devs are still going to have to optimize for what people have actually got, and that's increasingly the 3060. And that can work. Take Battlefield. It baked performance in from the start, which really paid off in PC. That approach, I think, is less of a nice to have and more of a necessity. I mean, as much as a big gamer may drop $2,000 on a top-end GPU, that same GPU could, I don't know, be bought for $5,000 by someone who's got a business use case for it, right? But as bad as that is, in a way, it's actually almost even worse, because a bunch of developers have been working on their games for a long-ass time. Many of those games will be targeting the top end of the current spectrum, right? The sorts of games that could be the crises of their day. And they are going to be massively hurt, because from the inception of their project to the release of their project, a little thing will have happened regarding the affordability of the hardware required to even run their project. And while I like to have a message of hope, I'm going to say that unless something drastic changes here, what we're experiencing currently will probably be the new normal. Prices may stabilize a little in the coming months, but it doesn't seem likely that they will return to where they are. And the painful thing is that a new normal can be worse than the old normal, and we'll probably have no choice but to just get used to that. That's at least where I think we're headed. Let me know what your analysis is. And if you want to learn about how console sales are quite flatlining to the point where a major publisher even described what they called the PS5 barrier, then watch this video next.